Hey everyone, it's Joy here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I made a really pretty card using the Vintage Mailbox A2 card base. I loved how this turned out. I think it's so much fun. So here is that Vintage Mailbox A2 card base. I am die cutting this from some teal cardstock. I'm cutting the back piece, then I will die cut the front piece. And this is going to be our card shape. And the way this die is made is the front part of this mailbox opens up, and that's where we are going to tuck our message in. And then I've added a bunch of other details that just turned out so lovely, and I just really love this card. So here is the front of that mailbox. The top piece, this part opens, that's the door I was talking about, and then the little top piece opens up as well. You could hide a message in that. I didn't do that this time because I added a bunch of other things, but you could have a message in both the top and the bottom, and I think that would be really fun for your recipient to have to kind of search and find. So then you have this die cut piece that matches the flap on top, and it goes, you can die cut this, it goes on top, but then you have another little piece that goes on top of that. That's going to add some detail, and then we have a piece that die cuts on top of that. So those two pieces here go together, they're going to sandwich together, and then you have the piece that's going to emboss the word post and some floral images that are going to go on that big door that opens. So I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending around this teal cardstock with Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to do it on the outsides, and I did have a piece that goes on the front here, that square piece, but I needed to die cut another one because I ink blended it just a bit too much and I did not love it. So I'm going to put that there in place on more of that teal cardstock, and now I have that centerpiece. So let's do a little bit of ink blending. I just barely did the edges, but we're going to highlight all of these embossed areas with some Distress Foundry wax, the Gilded one. So I squeezed some out onto my work surface, I dipped my finger in, and I tapped off a lot of the excess because I don't want a big chunk of it. I just want a little bit. So I'm going to go around the edges of these two pieces that sandwich together. So this piece here goes on top of that first piece I did. This piece has embossed areas, so as I'm gently rubbing over the top, it's revealing it. This kind of reminds me of like if you've gone to certain museums, like dinosaur museums, they might have the fossil there and your kids can lay a piece of paper over it and then gently color over it with a crayon and reveals the image. That's what this kind of reminded me of. I added a little bit more of that Foundry wax on the back. Now this is that square piece that goes on the front. I'm going to do the same thing because I want to reveal the word post and I want to reveal the flower work on the background. So I'm going to gently rub it over the top. Some areas I got a little much. I just kind of used my fingernail to scratch it out of the details and it was totally fine. But then it reveals all that embossed area. I think it's so pretty. Then I'm going to go over the top piece here. I'm going to go around the edges because I want everything to be highlighted. I am not going to go over the two flaps that open because we already have those pieces that we've done that are going to go on top of those. And then of course you have to use your heat gun to heat it and it gets all nice and shiny and beautiful. So this is how these pieces lay together. Now I forgot to show you how I glued these together because I did not turn my camera on, but you're just going to layer these pieces. Those two pieces go there. Then you have your big square piece. There's little dots that go on the corner of these. I've die cut from gold mirror cardstock. There's a piece at the top from gold mirror cardstock and then our little lock. This I've adhered with foam adhesive, and those two pieces I adhered with foam adhesive onto that flap. So I apologize for not recording it, but you're just laying them on top of each other and adhering it down. Super simple. Then we have the cute little mini postcard die. So I want to add this to our mailbox. It's going to be one of our fun details that we add. And I am using the Postmarked stamp set to stamp onto the postcard here. And you're not going to see a lot of this, but I still wanted to add the details because number one, it's fun and it's so cute. And you as the person who makes this card knows that these little fun details are in here. So I stamped this special delivery. I'm stamping with black ink. Then I'm going to take the little stamp And I will stamp that with Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to put that in place onto the stamp. But I was deciding, do I want to do black or do I want to do the peacock ink? And then I've decided to do the peacock ink. So let's get that figured out here, and then I can get that stamped. This is where I decided against that. And we're going to pop this in place, and I'm glad I did. Then you have these little stripes that I'm going to stamp with the Uncharted Mariner, just to add a little bit of that different color, bringing both colors into the card. So let's put that in place there. Then I didn't want this to be just completely white, and I also didn't want to completely distress it either. So I opted to bring in the stencil. This is the Vintage Flourish stencil, and I'm going to use the peacock feathers and just ink blend. And then I'm going to distress the edges just a little bit, or just ink blend the edges basically. Just adding a nice little color to this. Then I did decide to bring in a little bit of the antique linen around the edges. It's not overly distressed. I don't feel like it's like completely falling apart kind of a postcard, but it adds a little bit of color. Then I have die cut the Lovely Layers Sweetheart Roses. I think I've made a few cards with these. I love these so much. And I decided to bring in dried marigold for the roses. So I'm doing the ink blending for each one. I'm using the tiniest ink blending brush from Honeybee Stamps, and this lets me get darker areas and lighter areas. I use the darker ink blending where I can see the embossing on the die cuts. That's where I know you're going to see that part of that die cut once you layer all of these together. But I also like that this gives you darker and lighter areas when you ink blend. It's kind of a messy ink blending. It goes quick, but it really adds a nice detail if you like kind of that multicolored. If you want a solid color, then just obviously ink blend the whole thing. But I like this. It gives you variation. And when you look at flowers, there is variation in colors. So that's kind of my little ink blending technique with these. Then I'm using Peeled Paint Distress Oxide ink to to ink blend these die cut leaves. I have die cut these 3 times so I could have a lot of leaves. Now I'm going to adhere these together. I'm starting with the largest part at the bottom, and then you work down to your smallest piece, and you really can see how they lay together. There's also a layering guide that you guys can look at. If you don't have one in person, you can look on the website. They usually have one under these images here where you would, purchase your product. But these line up so easy. You just find the piece that matches one side of the flower or part of the flower, which is really easy to find. So these do go together quick, and if you're working from largest to smallest, you will know in what order they go. So I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue. So you have a large flower, a medium flower, and then you have 2 sizes of buds. And I did die cut some of these flowers multiple times because I'm adding a lot of flowers. And I actually off camera went back and die cut a couple more because I wanted a lot on here. So here's one of those little buds, and there's also a greenery piece that there's 2 different greenery pieces that goes with each one of the buds. So I'm going to glue those down as well. So here's our last bud. This one is open just a little bit more than that first one I did. And then we can adhere that little green piece right there. Okay, so now that all of those are done, let's get this little card together. So I'm going to add my postcard to the front of that opening, not to the back, because we want this to open up, because remember, we're going to tuck our message in here. So I'm just laying out some of my flowers. There is a leaf that's like a double leaf that glues to that largest rose and or the medium rose. So that's what I did there. Some of these will be popped up with foam adhesive. Some of them will not be. So this has a lot of dimension. So I would definitely put this in a padded envelope if you were going to mail this to someone. But it's so worth it. It's so pretty. I love, love, love how this card turned out. So I'm going to add some flowers down here at the bottom. I'm going to add some on the left side. And then once I was done with all of these, I realized I need some more flowers. So that's when I decided to die cut and ink blend a few more. Usually I'm pretty good about die cutting a bunch, but this just needed more than I thought. I'm going to tuck those leaves underneath the flowers, getting them in place. And I love that peeled paint against that teal background. I just think it's so pretty and it pops nicely. Deciding where that little leaf needs to go. So then I decided here, this is where I'm like, we need some more flowers on the right side. So here are the few more that I've die cut. I die cut 2 more of the buds, and then I think I did the medium flower. I'm going to add some leaves behind that. I'm going to pop this up with foam tape. I thought I was just going to adhere it to the background with liquid glue, but it needed that. And then I'm going to tuck these around the postcard, which I think is really pretty. And then I'm going to add a few more leaves everywhere, and I feel like this was totally what it needed. And you could also add some gem stickers or anything like that to this. That would be pretty. Then I'm adding more of that Gilded Foundry wax to the flowers and the leaves. So again, dipping my finger in, tapping off the excess, and I'm just letting it hit where my finger runs over. I did not want to do too much, but I did want to make sure I got some on most of the leaves, if not all, and then definitely all of the flowers. You could leave this out if you didn't want so much of that Foundry wax, but I just thought it was so beautiful, and I felt like it just really aged these and distressed these. Then I'm taking my heat gun to it just to get a nice melt, and this melts really, really fast. And then now let's get to our sentiment. Oh, wait, I added some to the postcard. I did forget about that. It looked out of place not having it since everything else had it. So, and then I did decide to add a much bigger areas on the top and bottom of the mailbox that have more of that Foundry wax. Okay, now let's get to our stamp set. This is the Lean on Each Other Stamp and Coordinating Die. This sentiment says, when we lean on each other, we both stand tall. I just thought that was a really sweet sentiment. I'm using the coordinating dies to die cut these out. Then I'm going to adhere this with some liquid glue at the top so you have room to write your message to the recipient. Okay, let's take a look at this up close. Look at how beautiful this turned out. I love all of the dimension, the lovely layers, everything is beautiful. And this vintage mailbox is just stunning. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired with this project, and I hope you guys have a really wonderful day. Bye.